and the demand for obesity surgery has never been higher. Most of these patients are addicted to food and just want to lead happier, healthier lives. But for some, the stakes are much higher. Today on Fat Doctor, two patients who desperately need to lose weight so they are fit enough to undergo major surgery. 45-year-old Gary Salmon has kidney disease and urgently needs an organ transplant.
They are failing, and in about a year, I'll need to go on to dialysis.
At almost 25 stone, transplant surgeons have refused to operate on him. 51-year-old Caroline has a dangerously large stomach hernia. But at 19 stone, surgeons say an operation to repair it is too risky.
Okay, so...
Pain, that's all it is, and it's horrendous pain. I just want to end it.
Expect graphic scenes of gastric surgery on Fat Doctor. In Brighton, 45-year-old Gary Salmon has been living with a rare kidney condition for the last 20 years. But now his kidneys are failing fast.
I have disease in both my kidneys, which is called glomerular nephritis, and they are failing, and currently in about a year, I'll need to go on to dialysis.
He's been with his partner Dawn for the last 27 years. She recalls when Gary was first diagnosed.
Gary was in his early 20s when he first found out about his kidney condition. He had a problem, went to the doctors, sent us up to the specialist, the kidney specialist, told us to sort of go away, forget about it, that he'd probably be hit by a red double-decker bus before it became a problem.
But 20 years later, it's now an urgent problem.
And then in the last few years, sort of now he's hit his 40s, it's just his kidneys started deteriorating. And then 2 years ago, well, probably 18 months ago, he was told that probably within 6 years he would be needing a transplant. It was a bit of a shock. It was a hell of a shock, actually.
Gary is lucky. There are currently 93,000 patients on the kidney transplant waiting list, but he's found a willing donor of his own here in the Channel Islands.
There are many people waiting for kidney transplant. I'm in a very fortunate position where my sister, who lives in Jersey, is willing to give me one of hers.
He was starting to say that, you know, there are different ways that you can have kidney transplants and living donors can be considered and how these sort of plans work. And I can remember saying to him, well, I'm your only sister, so let's go and have some tests done and just see whether it would be a possibility or not, and whether, you know, we would match up before we go any further along the process of it.
Lindy's kidney matched, but that was just the beginning. Back in Brighton, Gary's kidney specialist had some bad news about his prospects for a transplant operation. The success rate for transplant surgery is dramatically reduced for patients with a BMI over 30. Gary's BMI is 50.
I think it first hit Gary when we went to see Dr. Ego, and we were talking about obviously having a transplant and things, you know, like that. And Dr. Ego said to Gary, even if we had a kidney on the table there ready to transplant into you, we couldn't do it because of your weight. And that was a shocker. That was the wake-up call. That was like, oh my God, I've got to do something about this. This is serious.
Gary and Dawn live with their daughter Kirsty. Kirsty is expecting their first grandchild any day now.
This is your 50th, Mum, yours and Dad's 50th over in Jersey.
Oh, God.
With everybody and all your grandchildren.
Yes, look at them.
Your next one's not there yet, obviously, but... oh, there you go.
Gary's family can recall a time when he tried to diet.
Probably felt like it.
Sometimes it worked, as his mum Lillian recalls.
See the difference?
Yeah.
The face?
Yeah.
He was quite the size, and he'd made the effort, and he'd lost a lot of weight. And, you know, he was so much better for it and everything. And then over a period of time, he obviously, weight crept back on, and then I suppose he realised, and of course we had joint trouble and various other bits that obviously it wasn't for him, and then it got to the point where the kidneys were deteriorating.
For Gary, it's been a 20-year struggle with his weight.
I think I've always had a bit of a weight problem in, you know, since when the children turned up and I had to give up some of my activities, you know, because of a small family, young family, I didn't change any other habits. So I wasn't expending the energy and slowly the weight came on.
Before the kidneys became an issue, I was worried about Gary's weight anyway. He's always been a big guy. He's never going to be a Slim Jim. He's always been a big fella. His knees are starting to hurt, his ankles starting to hurt, not being able to walk far, which was an impact on our lives. If we went up to London for a weekend, we went up to see a show, not so long ago, and we couldn't just walk. I love to walk and to have a look around, and Gary couldn't do that. I mean, that was his excuse for stopping in all the pubs. But it did have an impact, and he did suffer for a few days after, because he did walk more than what he would normally do, and that was all weight related. Honestly,
My problem is that when I eat, I like to eat until I feel very full. We're built for feast famine. Food is readily available now, virtually 24 hours a day, and our bodies aren't designed for that. If we go back, we never knew when we were going to get our next meal, and now we just get it when we want, and we think we're hungry and we're probably not.
Gary needs help to lose weight, and he thinks surgery may be the answer. Shaw Summers carries out more than 200 obesity operations every year.
From most surgeons' point of view, surgery is the last resort for a patient with extreme weight problems. We would really like there to be another option, be that a medicine that works or a counselling and dietetic programme that helps people get through and lose significant amounts of weight and keep them off. Unfortunately, the grim reality is there isn't anything else that works for people with severe overweight problems.
If he wants to avoid a lifetime on dialysis, Gary knows the time has come for drastic action. He and Dawn have come to the obesity clinic run by Shaw Summers, knowing this could be his last chance.
The kidney specialist won't operate on me at the size I am, so I need some fairly rapid weight loss, and then I need to be able to maintain that weight loss.
We're hoping that they'll accept Gary onto this scheme to help him achieve what he needs to get him fit and healthy again.
Gary is seeing another member of Shaw Summers' team, surgeon Chris Pring.
Hello, Gary. Chris Spring. Have a seat. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Right, Gary. We're going to talk to you today about bariatric surgery. From having read your notes and looked at everything, I understand that your kidneys are starting to fail.
Yeah.
You're heading, as I understand it, towards a kidney transplant.
Yeah.
Now, the surgeons who do the kidney transplant may well have explained all this to you, that they would want your weight to come down significantly before they attempt a kidney transplant. They'd probably want you to lose about 10 stone, actually, because you're currently about 24.5 stone.
Right.
We're going to try and get you down to sort of 14.5 stone. The reason the kidney doctors want that is because when they do a renal transplant, if we can get you healthier, then whenever it comes to a kidney transplant, that means the complications and the problems with a kidney transplant are significantly less.
Chris has decided to offer Gary a gastric bypass operation. This will help Gary reduce his BMI from 50 to 30, which will enable the transplant to go ahead.
A gastric bypass is exactly the right thing for Gary to be doing. He will hopefully, I expect him to lose about 10 stone over the next year. That'll get him down to a BMI of about 30, which is just what the kidney transplant surgeons want.
Gary is now set for the obesity surgery that could end up saving his life. Caroline Horlick is also in desperate need of an operation. But like Gary, she must lose weight before she can have it. For the last 3 years, she has suffered from a large and painful hernia. It means a substantial part of her intestine has come through the wall of her abdominal cavity.
I need to get the hernia done because the hernia sticking out, it makes people look at you, and I get depressed as well because it's painful. When I eat, the food makes it worse. So that is holding me back.
But at 19 stone, Caroline has been turned down repeatedly for surgery to repair the hernia. The size of Caroline's hernia means it's almost impossible for her to find work.
I can't go to get a job because they won't take me on because of the hernia. That makes me depressed. And I need a job because to keep the house going for the mortgage. And I can't do that because I can't get a job. And so everything is tied really against me to get anything sorted.
Hi.
Husband Mike has seen the struggle Caroline has faced.
It upsets her, you know. She gets really uptight about it. You know, she's been for numerous jobs, and no people won't take her on because of her hernia. So
Caroline has always suffered from being overweight, from childhood, through her teenage years, and into adulthood. For years, Caroline had a difficult relationship with food, overeating when she was anxious or depressed.
If anything was getting on top of me, I'd just go to the crisps without even thinking. I could eat 6-7 packets all to go. I don't know why I used it. It was a salt in them or whatever it was, but I used to eat crisps galore. I think with food, it is a minefield with me. I just wish, as I say, that there was a tablet I could take and just have a tablet and not eat at all. Yeah.
Caroline has tried dieting, but she always put the weight back on. Shopping now, she tries to buy the right kind of food, but it doesn't always work out that way.
worst time, she a lot of fizzy drinks, you know, pops and nothing about eating 10 packets of crisps. So, you know, that was the main thing, crisps. So, she get depressed, she'd have a packet of crisps. So, pretty much.
Because I like a lot of savoury things, and the savoury things more than sweet stuff. But I do like ice cream and that. So, you know, I do try to eat healthily as well, but the quick stuff, I like a lot of the quick stuff. It's easy to prepare, like, you know, just having an ice cream.
But it didn't stop at buying and eating food. Caroline also hoards food she may never eat.
And then I've got a thing about meat, because meat is expensive. And my family said meat, the meat is the most expensive thing, and eat the meat up. So I just put it away and store it until I can have it another time, but it never can. 5 or 6 years later, I still got the food. That Cumberland pie's been in a long time, but it was a pie and it was cheap, and it was worth it. It was £1.
She doesn't even know when she bought some of this food.
I got salmons. One's in May and June, but I don't know which year, because I've got years on them. It's just that it's like a safety thing there, but I very rarely use it and end up throwing it away. Like a safety net sort of thing. The food's there.
In recent years, Caroline's obesity has been exacerbated by a rare bone condition in her foot that makes it difficult for her to walk, so the weight has piled on. And like a lot of obese people, she now has diabetes. But it's her hernia that causes the greatest problem. 2 years ago, she was rushed to hospital for an emergency operation.
When I was working, I got a phone call that we all had to go, her father, mother and sister and that, and it was a 50-50 chance. If they didn't do the operation, she'd die. So luckily, thankfully, they'd done the operation and she's here today. So.
The emergency operation saved her life, but due to her size, the hernia was never fully repaired, and it's getting bigger and bigger. But nothing can be done about it until she loses sufficient weight to make the operation safe. Now help may finally be on the way. She has an appointment with consultant Chris Pring at the Obesity Clinic at St Richard's Hospital in Chichester. Caroline is with her mum and her husband Mike.
Hello, Caroline.
Hello.
How are you? Chris Pring.
Hello.
See you. Come and have a seat. Have a seat. So then, Caroline, can we have a look at the hernia? Okay, so...
That side comes out, that's the one that comes
Okay.
out.
Well, I can see why they're a bit scared of doing anything,
They
because...
want to.
So I think the best strategy here is to try and get you healthier through a bariatric operation. Try and get rid of your diabetes, try and get rid of your high blood pressure, get your weight down. As you get healthier, that hernia becomes easier to treat.
Yeah.
This is a bit of trouble here, really. Yeah, it's difficult for you, Caroline. We've got to try and get the safest way through all this. You know,
It's an upsetting time for Caroline, but her case presents Chris Pring with a real dilemma.
This is very difficult. You know, there's part of me that was wondering whether we should just not do any bariatric surgery and you just need that hernia repairing. And there's part of me that thinks, well, that hernia won't be repaired very well until you have bariatric surgery.
The next problem for Chris Pring is what kind of obesity operation to perform.
I went in there and they put me on.
There are a number of options.
I mean, the bariatric operation we're talking about is called a sleeve gastrectomy,
Yeah.
all right? A sleeve gastrectomy involves cutting away a lot of your stomach to give you a small stomach tube. You know, that's a major, major operation in itself.
But Chris does have an alternative.
Well, OK, well, I wonder whether a gastric band might be a better operation for you than a sleeve gastrectomy. Because the big problem is your hernia here, all right? And we've got to try and basically get to a situation that if we need to repair your hernia, we can do it as quickly as possible. Yeah. A gastric band is probably the very lowest risk operation. And a gastric band will probably give you reasonable amount of weight loss, or enough to get that hernia repaired. The success of a hernia...
In the end, Chris decides on the riskier option.
Okay, so this sleeve gastrectomy, which is taking out a lot of, you know, we take out 80% of your stomach to make a small stomach tube so that with a small amount of food you feel full. You then lose the weight, and then hopefully you're in a better position to have your hernia repaired. But I'd emphasise there's no guarantee that this hernia won't start causing problems.
After the
It might beat us to it.
You know, being given the chance to have a normal life. And
yes, well, we've got to try and make you healthier, that's for sure. Yeah. All right, Caroline. Yeah, very
Thank
good.
you so
All right,
much.
OK.
Thank you.
So we're going to see you in a few weeks, aren't we? Is that right? Yeah, for you.
Thanks so much for doing this for me.
Yeah, that's all right, Caroline. Yeah, OK. All right, see you.
Thank you.
See you. I've thought a lot about Caroline. It's very difficult to truly know which is the best option for her. I've wrestled with it, but I think we'll try and get her weight down and then do a hernia repair for her when she's in a healthier position. But I have no crystal ball, so if nature takes a different course and decides that a hernia is going to be the problem, then we'll have to react to that as necessary. We get challenging patients, and Caroline's a great example. I mean, she is who she is. She needs help. We can't ignore the problem. And you can't just say, go and see somebody else, because who else is going to do it?
Caroline must hope the hernia can hold out for the next 2 weeks. Then Chris Pring will be able to perform the weight loss surgery that will give Caroline the chance of finally getting her hernia repaired. Both Gary and Caroline are hoping for the kind of results that are celebrated each year by the former patients of Shaw Summers and Chris Pring. This is the annual garden party held this year in the grounds of Chichester Cathedral.
2 years ago, August the 26th, 2009, I decided to change my life. And I haven't looked back since. I was 24 stone, 3 pounds when I started, and I'm now 10 stone 8. I feel wonderful now. My husband can't keep me down. I'm out five nights a week Zumbaing and keeping fit and toning up.
I had a gastric bypass in February 2010 and I've lost 8 stone in weight so far. And I feel like a new person. It was the best thing I've ever done, and I will be eternally grateful to the surgeons and the hospital staff.
I'm 47 years old. I had a bypass in February 2010 and I've lost 14 stone 9 pounds, and I feel amazing because of it.
I had my op on January the 27th of this year. I was at my biggest 23 stone, but 20 stone on the day of my op, and I'm now 13.5 stone. Amazing. It's like being given a new lease of life, it really is.
It is a very emotional, very deep-seated journey that these people go through, having to change their lives completely, and it does help talking about it, and sometimes to talk to us about the personal journey they've made is part of the treatment.
Surgery may not be for everyone, but for these patients, it worked. Two weeks later, and Gary Salmon is just 24 hours from his gastric bypass operation.
I'm going to make some jelly. Probably be the last one I'll be making.
For the last fortnight, he's been on a strict milk-only sugar-free jelly diet in order to shrink his liver. That should make it easier for surgeon Chris Pring to access his stomach.
Or gastric bypass that I'm going to have tomorrow will give me a good springboard to enable me to lose some weight. More importantly, it's going to enable me to maintain my weight loss, which is the key that's been missing for me to have my kidney transplant.
Gary knows all too well how important losing this weight is to his future.
Failure to lose the weight, when my kidney gets to the stage where it can no longer cope, I'll have to go on to dialysis. And there's big leaps and bounds being done on dialysis at the moment, but my understanding of it is it's 3 days a week in hospital, 3 sessions a week. it would bring all sorts of problems with it. I can't imagine any employer being particularly happy.
Tomorrow may be Gary's big day, but for Dawn, there are divided loyalties. Daughter Kirsty could be giving birth.
So what time are we shooting off tomorrow?
Well, it says we need to be there at 7:30, so I think we better leave Brighton at no later than 6:15.
Beat traffic.
Yeah, just in case. That's assuming Kirsty doesn't go into labour.
Well, if she goes into labour, then you take second fiddle and you're getting a bus down there then, because I'm going with my daughter, I'm afraid. So that'll be your lot. Get someone else to give you a lift.
That's the milk diet finished.
Don't want to see milkshakes or jelly ever again, do you, after this?
Not in the same volume.
How many T-shirts do you want then?
Only a couple.
Couple, is that all they keep you for?
It's time for Gary to pack his bag for the hospital.
It's a big relief that he's going to get help, absolutely. We'll get Gary back, which will be good. Yeah, I can't wait to see the end result, really. I think it'll be lovely to see him fit and healthy again. Yeah, and he'll get there.
It's early morning at St Richard's Hospital in Chichester. It promises to be a busy day for surgeon Chris Pring. He'll be operating on both Caroline and Gary this morning. Both are potentially complicated cases. Caroline has arrived early with husband Mike for surgery that she hopes will eventually mean the end of her painful hernia. Gary is arriving with his partner Dawn. The operation will be his first step on the way to a kidney transplant. Chris Pring has to get Caroline's consent for what he knows will be a tricky operation.
You look like you've lost some weight from your milk diet. I can see it in your face. So, look, this is the consent form for the operation.
Yeah.
We've talked about all of this in the clinic.
Yeah.
Okay. This is you here.
Caroline will be having most of her stomach removed in a procedure called a sleeve gastrectomy. This will help her lose weight so that a later hernia operation will be possible.
You just need to sign it there. So we'll get you sorted out and bring you back here. The operation probably takes an hour and a half or so, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
Yeah.
Gary also needs to give consent to his gastric bypass operation.
Right, so this is the consent form, Gary. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is you here. Gastric bypass, keyhole surgery.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get you to sign it there. So the other key afterwards is keeping an eye on your kidney function. In actual fact, as you lose weight, you know, your kidney function may well improve. You know, there are, a group of people whose kidney function improves and they avoid transplantation. So let's see how you go.
Bit nervous, obviously, but it's, it needs to be done, so it'll be a good thing.
Gary makes his way with Dawn down to the operating theatre. It's the beginning of a long journey, which will end up with him 10 stone lighter and with a new kidney.
Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
Behave for it. Your daughter starts to... I'll see you later, Dawn. See you later.
This is where bariatric surgery really offers an example of this is about improving people's health rather than losing weight. You know, if they lose the weight, then it's the health gain that is the most important aspect of why we operate on most of our patients. Like I said, I think it'll be fairly straightforward type of procedure for it.
This is keyhole surgery. Chris creates 6 ports in Gary's stomach through which he can insert a camera and his instruments.
It's all done. This is what we call keyhole laparoscopy. It's the proper name for it.
Chopsticks.
Chopsticks. It's what the crystals. Here we are. So we're looking down into the pelvis. Gary's bladder is down there. That's a bit of colon there. And that's it there.
Chris can now start the first stage of the operation, bypassing nearly 1 metre of Gary's intestine.
This tape measure here helps me accurately do that. You have about 4 metres of small bowel that you can do, so good. So that's 80 centimetres to there. Put this back where it came from. Back down there, look, just around pull it all out. Now I'm going to divide this bit of bowel here. It staples across the bowel and divides it at the same time. If I pull the trigger, you'll see some staple lines. Just there.
This shortened intestine will eventually be reattached to Gary's new, smaller stomach. Gary's eating habits will never be the same again after surgery. Back on the ward, it's a long wait for Gary's partner Dawn, who also has the birth of her new grandchild to think about. Across the room is Chris Pring's next patient, Caroline. She's been joined by her parents and will soon be on her way to the operating theatre. The second stage of Gary's surgery is to staple his stomach to reduce it from the size of a melon to the size of an egg.
So hopefully that's divided the stomach completely. Okay, so I just take that. So this is all his old stomach now. This is no longer divided. This is all separated from where the food's going to be coming. But it's important that his stomach, it runs down here to the duodenum, and then that'll run to that biliary, the very first thing we prepared. So it's important, this stomach. It still has a lot of enzymes, produces a lot of hormones. It still has a physiological role to play, and it just sits there nice and happily. This, meanwhile, is Gary's new stomach. So this is a stomach that's going to be full of food, and you can just see how small it is in relation to everything else here. So he has a very small stomach, which is what we want.
The operation is finally complete once Chris Pring has attached the shorter intestine to Gary's new, smaller stomach.
Okay, that's it. So that went very well. It's all straightforward, which is what we needed for Gary, really, because we needed to protect his kidneys. Now we've just finished, his breathing's already better, his kidney function is looking good. It's all been about looking after his kidneys, trying to do as safe and as quick an operation as we could. I think Gary will make a speedy recovery. Yes, the road to his next step of his kidney treatment now.
Well done.
Because of the potential complication of Gary's kidney disease, he will spend 24 hours in the high dependency unit, where his renal function can be closely monitored.
Hi Dawn, it's Chris Pring here. All done, everything went very well indeed.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It was very smooth, and we did it quite quickly. And actually his kidneys look like they're behaving quite well. So he's awake now, but that went really well, Dawn. So have a cup of tea, don't worry, and I'll see you later on this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, Dawn, see you, bye.
Bye-bye. Brilliant. All done, he's okay, and he's behaved.
Chris heads back to theatre. His next patient, Caroline, is another complex case. With a BMI of 44, she needs to lose 6 stone to make it safer for her to have a major operation. But this surgery is much more problematic for Chris Pring than Gary's gastric bypass.
Most of her bowel is within this hernia. No one will repair a hernia for her until she loses weight. And that's sensible in many ways, because to do a repair on somebody with Caroline's BMI is very, very difficult. It has a lot of risk, and the biggest risk is that it will come back. What I'm worried about with Caroline is the space that I'm going to have inside the abdomen, because I think a lot of that space will be taken up with this hernia and all the bowel going into this hernia. So we may have to think on our feet a little bit and work around it all. So we'll see how we go. So again, we go in like we normally do with our camera through all of the layers. Okay, so there's her hernia. I'm pressing on here, and you can see there's a muscle defect through which her bowel is moving into it. That's a colon by the looks of things. I'm just not going to get involved in any of that. It's a big hernia.
Because of the hernia, Chris Pring can't access Caroline's intestine as he would in the more common gastric bypass operation he performed on Gary.
She could have had a gastric bypass, but as we saw from her hernia on the inside, all of her bowel is stuck up in this horrible hernia. And we need that bowel to do the gastric bypass. So we anticipated that and said, look, I don't think a gastric bypass will work because we won't have access to your bowel. So then the other operations we have for her is a thing called the sleeve gastrectomy, which is this operation I'm doing now, where we're actually going to divide a lot of the stomach and take and remove it, or the gastric band. We sort of did talk about the gastric band, but with Caroline's eating behaviours in general, the gastric band wouldn't actually have worked that well for her. So this operation offers better, this sleeve gastrectomy offers better weight loss than the gastric band, and it's more self-sufficient.
This involves taking out 80% of Caroline's stomach, leaving her with just a thin tube in which to digest food.
So look at this big baggy stomach now. All right, we're going to take most of that off and leave her with a very thin tube of stomach that runs down here. That's the end of the stomach there, that's the pylorus. We measure 4 centimetres, which is here. We're going to start our division at this point here. So the first staple goes 4 centimetres away from the pylorus, and a grasper to me. Okay. So now we'll go 60. Okay. So Ruth will now send her tube down. Yeah.
Anaesthetist Ruth inserts a tube into Caroline's existing stomach. Chris will use this as a guide to judge where precisely to make the line of staples. Caroline's protruding hernia makes it difficult to get the staple gun in the right position.
Good, so that's the stomach sleeve done.
And soon there is bleeding from the line of staples.
The first thing I'm going to do is just stitch that staple line up. But a bit difficult because this hernia kept getting in the way of the gun and I couldn't fire the gun how I wanted. And this bit of the stomach here, the redundant stomach, this is going to come out in a minute.
Now comes the most dramatic moment of Caroline's operation. Chris has to remove the old stomach that will never see food again.
Clip, a Robert's clip. That's it. There we go. Okay, so this is her removed stomach. We've stapled all the way up across here. The esophagus would come down here, so we've removed that. She's now just got a thin stomach tube left inside. And if you filled this up, this would expand like a big baggy ball.
2 hours after the start of a complicated operation, Caroline is ready to be stitched up.
I found that was quite difficult, really, because the port positions were made life a bit tricky. And a big hernia down the bottom was just getting in the way with my hands. But yeah, I was happy with it at the end. You know, at the end it looked absolutely fine, but it could have been a lot worse. Most of the hernia was down towards the tummy button, and most of this operation was done much further up towards her head. So she will stay with us for 2 days. She'll start to have some fluids, maybe a little bit to drink tonight, and maybe a little bit more to drink and something to eat tomorrow.
It's 4 hours after Caroline's operation, and she's back on the ward. Gary will spend the night on the high dependency unit, and it's the end of another long day for Chris Pring. The next morning, Chris Pring is back at St Richard's to check on the x-rays taken of Caroline's new stomach.
That's the x-ray doctors to do an x-ray where Caroline swallows some dye, and as the dye goes down her gullet into her new stomach, they can take a picture of it so I can see what this new stomach looks like and check that there's no leak from all the staples that I've put in and the stitches. So this is her x-ray, and it looks great actually. This is her gullet here. This comes down to the point where her stomach starts, and look at this, this is her new stomach tube down here. If you can see that, I hope. So this is a new stomach tube. So previously, obviously, she'd have had a big stomach out here, but we've taken that stomach away. She's now got this very narrow, thin stomach, and that looks great. That's sitting nicely, and there's no leak there. Well, I think with a stomach like this, I think Caroline will probably lose 6 to 8 stone over the next year. And obviously for her, that's a huge amount of weight. That'll then make her operation for her hernia much, much easier. It will reduce the complications that she'd potentially experience. So she'll do well with that. Yeah, she'll go home tomorrow, day 2. No beeping, yeah, she'll be quiet. Hi, Caroline. I've looked at your X-ray, which is fine. You've got a very narrow, long, thin stomach tube now. So I think your weight will come off quite quickly. But we've got to keep an eye on this hernia. So we've got to try and manage that, but hopefully as your weight comes down, that'll get easier. That's not bad.
Caroline can leave hospital tomorrow.
Day 2, get your hand.
That's to all the nurses.
Yeah, right, you are.
Give me a chance.
Oh, bless
Give
you.
me a chance.
Oh, you're sweet. Oh, it's very kind of you, Caroline.
To be without pain is a very, special thing.
Yeah. All right, well, it's the start now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Onwards and upwards.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for this. All right, Caroline, I'll see you later. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Chris.
You're feeling all right, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. He said stay for the blood pressure tablets.
Yeah, fine.
Anything potassium.
Yeah, that's right, okay.
Tomatoes, mushrooms, but I'm not going to go
No, that's right. So we'll get you home tomorrow, and then the renal guys will see you next week. We'll see you in about 6 weeks, just to see how you're going from the bariatric side of things.
Yeah.
But then the renal team will keep an eye on your renal function and everything else.
It's been 3 months since Caroline Horlick had her operation. She's lost almost 3.5 stone, but her journey isn't over yet.
Now 75% of me is fixed. It's just the other 25, just the hernia out the way, and so that I can move on and look for work and be able to do exercise and get my life back. I can still not go upstairs. I still limp on this leg because of the hernia bulging over. I still got a big lump that goes out, and I still get lumps when I eat.
Caroline has no idea where or when she's going to get her operation. She's returning to St Richard's Hospital. Chris Spring is her last hope.
Hi, Caroline. You've lost about 3.25 stone. Let's have a look at the hernia, all right? I'll lie you up on the couch if you come through with me, and I'm going to have a feel of the hernia and see what
I'll take my coat off here.
So let's lie down on here, Caroline. But this is the area that's a problem.
Yeah.
And this is all this hernia in here. And I can see from the bumps and lumps on your abdominal wall that this is all bowel.
Yeah.
And this is where you feel it gurgling
Yeah,
when you
it's
eat.
gurgling and wind, when the lumps come out, I've had it.
Yeah.
The lumps, like little lumps, come up.
Yes.
And that's when the pain starts.
Yeah, the hernia is a big hole in your muscle.
Yeah.
And through it protrude all the contents that lie behind it. And in your case, it's your bowel. And this is bowel here that's sort of coming through.
After the examination, Chris has made the decision. He's going to operate on her hernia himself.
I'm happy to do this for you.
That's good news for Caroline.
That's all right.
I'm so glad.
We should go walking to everyone, can't we?
Yeah, you're a lifesaver.
Let's hope so.
I remember when you said that I could have the operation, I said I could give you a kiss.
Caroline's gone from 19 stone to just under 16 stone in 3 months. Her operation will be in 2 months' time. This is the news Caroline has been waiting for years. But it will not be without its risks.
With this operation, the risks aren't insignificant. I would say there's a 3 to 5% chance of there being a complication with this operation. But like I said, I won't be truly happy and pleased until I know that she's left hospital and we won't have to see her again. Sounds harsh, but that's the success. It's not over until it's over.
It's 12 weeks since Gary Salmon had his gastric bypass operation, and already he's achieved dramatic changes in his weight.
I've actually lost 4.5 stone, which is about halfway towards where I need to be for the kidney surgeons. So in 12 weeks, that's phenomenal.
Gary has travelled to Jersey, in the Channel Islands. At the airport to meet him is sister Lindy. Lindy agreed 2 years ago to give Gary one of her kidneys for a transplant, and Gary wants to show her the progress he's made.
I realise that I'm incredibly lucky to have someone in my family willing to be considered for a kidney donor. There's plenty of people out there that need renal help that aren't as lucky as me, and that's why I need to do everything I can to make sure that I take that opportunity.
to give me the best quality of life and extend my life with my family.
I think my family, they feel concerned about me actually undergoing the operation, but I think they understand how important it would be that if I am a match and the transplant can take place, that's what we want to go ahead and do.
And Gary has taken the first step with his gastric bypass operation, and he's coping well.
A lot of people have said to me, how's the diet going? And my response is that I don't actually feel like I'm on a diet, because I'm eating pretty much what I want, pretty much when I want, and feel content all the time. So I don't actually feel hungry. And then now it's just part of everyday life. The last 20 years I've yo-yoed with my weight, and I think that if you keep trying something and it doesn't work, and unless you change your approach, you can only expect the same outcome. And you know, for me, bariatric surgery has made the difference.
Meanwhile, back in Brighton, Gary's partner Dawn and daughter Kirsty are entertaining new arrival Harry, born just 8 days after Gary's operation.
Well, he's gorgeous, obviously the best grandchild ever. He's just brilliant, and it's just made us so happy. It really has. And what a lovely boost for Gary to come out of hospital and then have his grandson here. I think Gary was more of a pain than the baby.
Dawn is excited about Gary's progress.
He's halfway there. He's already halfway there to getting to the BMI that he needs to be for them to start considering him having a kidney transplant. And that is and in what, 11 weeks? That's incredible. So yeah, really good.
Since the operation, the kidney people have been really good monitoring my kidneys, which actually didn't seem to have any adverse effect to the operation. And during their monitoring, they've seen my weight dropping quite rapidly, and they've already said that they will restart the test workup for the transplant procedure.
It's a major operation that both Gary and Lindy will have to undertake.
I do wonder how it's going to affect me. And obviously it'll mean having to have time off work and be away from my family for a little while, just for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, to actually have the operation done and recover enough to be able to come back home again.
You do worry though, because their own family's young and you don't know what's in store, but what else would you do if it's your own brother? You know, whatever you are, you try and help, wouldn't you?
It's a massive commitment that my sister's made to give me a better quality of life as I go through my renal failure, and I know I'd do the same for her because we're very close, but it's nice to be able to just check with her now and again and not just give her a really nice present at Christmas, and it's nice for her to see that the commitment that's coming from my end as well.
I'm not scared about actually having the operation done. I think you hold on to that realisation that you can be the person who can help out and actually save his life and hopefully give him some sort of normality back into his life.
Gary has lost 4.5 stone since his operation and hopes to lose up to 6 more, taking his weight to nearer 14 stone. Gary and Lindy are now having more tests and hope to have the transplant operation within the next year.